Hello and welcome to another New Tecumseh Public Library Idea Lab tutorial. In the last video, we covered Cricut Design Space. In this video, we will be moving on to the hardware portion of our tutorial. So you've clicked Make It and are wondering what comes next. This is where the software meets the hardware and where we will begin making our cuts, our score line, and our pen marks. You will need the color of cardstock you specified for cutting, the color and size of pen you would like to use on your card, a scoring tool, and a cutting mat. Assuming you have these materials and tools at the ready, you have everything you need to proceed. Once you have clicked on Make It, you will see a pop-up screen asking you what sort of mat you will be using for your card. For the purposes of this tutorial, we will be making use of the 12x12 cutting mats. So first we're going to select On Mat. And then you'll see there's this little box here, or this little bubble where you can indicate whether you're working on a 12x12 or a 12x24 mat. We've already got 12x12, so that's perfect. We're going to click Confirm, and there we go. After you click Confirm, you will see a screen with all of your mats in the left sidebar. So that's the one we're in right now. The left sidebar is over here. Underneath each mat, you have options for whether or not it is going to be cut on a mat and the size of the material, both of which we already specified, as well as the option to mirror our mats. We won't be using the mirror function today, as that will primarily be used for heat transfer projects and some select materials that are cut out face down like leather. So here we'll see we've got our on mat. You could change this to without a mat or on a card mat. There's your little mirror slider there. So if you click it, you'll see it will mirror your image. And then here we've got 12x12. It's worth noting, even though we're working on a 12x12 mat, you could change the material size to 8.5x11 if you were concerned about it fitting and you were using letter size paper. So that way we know our design's fitting on the paper itself, not just the mat. Not really necessary if you know you're well within those limits, but just something worth noting. Now that we have the correct settings for our mats, let's look at how to edit them. As you select each mat on the sidebar, you should see a representation of where on your material your operations will happen. This is useful, especially if you are using scrap material that isn't quite 12x12. If this is the case, you should be able to left click and drag your design in order to line it up with your actual physical material using the grid lines on the mat. So here you can see this is a digital representation, but I could cut it out over here if I wanted to. Or I could cut it out over here. If you're using a piece of cardstock that is 8.5x11 or another common size, you can specify that in the material size drop down previously mentioned. So we already went over that, but that is just right here. So you can see that for this one is where it would probably be most relevant. So you can see it rotates our design for us because it knows it's not going to fit this way. Keep in mind that you can edit your mats anytime throughout this process, which is useful if you need to wait and see how your actual physical material is going to line up on the mat before making the edits. At this point, we are going to click on the Continue button down here in the bottom right of your screen. So we'll do that and you'll see we'll begin loading in. Once you do click on Continue and it loads in, you will be prompted to select a material for your mat. At this point, there is a slight difference between the Explore Air 2 and the Maker 3. The Maker 3 will take you directly to a virtual list of popular materials, which is what we are looking at right now. More can be found by clicking on Browse Materials, just up here on the top right of these popular ones. So if we click on that, you'll see we'll get this whole list of all different types of materials. Is quite extensive. The same screen is available on the Explorer 2, but can only be reached by turning the dial on the machine itself to custom. You will notice that this dial also has selectable materials that can be used without having to find them on the virtual list. So this is sort of the analog equivalent of your popular materials list here for the Maker 3. Great news! Pretty well all of the remaining steps are following the on-screen instructions or pressing the flashing button on the Cricut itself. So I'm going to select medium cardstock. Now that we've selected a material, you will note that the next on-screen instruction is to load our tools into the clamps. So you can see the tools right here. For this first mat, it's only a blade because we're not using the pen or the scoring stylus at all. For this project, we will be making use of all three of those tools: the pen, the scoring stylus, and the fine point blade. Not every mat will require all three of these tools, so pay attention to which tools are required between each mat. I'm just going to show you that for demonstration's sake before we get started. So this one you see just the fine point blade, as I mentioned. If I do medium cardstock on this one, you can see Midnight 0.4 pen in clamp A, fine point blade in clamp B. And then if we do the third mat, this is the one that will require all three. So we've got our black pen in clamp A once again, and our scoring, that's the wheel, but we actually have a stylus. So we'll do a scoring stylus, and that actually changes which clamp and which order things go in. So now it's scoring stylus in clamp A, followed by fine point blade in clamp B. And then partway through this, we're gonna have to switch one of the clamps to the pen. Once that's done, we will begin interacting with the buttons on the Cricut itself. First, we will press the currently flashing button to load the mat. Do this once the mat is in the correct position, which is up against the wheels and underneath the white plastic guides. At this point, the Go button should be flashing and we are going to press it. Ta-da! You've now completed your first mat. Well, once it finishes cutting. Repeat this process for the remaining mats while following the on-screen instructions. Note the ability to edit the position of the layers of your project to correspond with your material using the grid lines as mentioned earlier. This feature can also be used if you've accidentally mirrored or have forgotten to mirror a mat as well. Once all of your mats have been completed, all that's left is weeding and assembly. Congrats on your first Cricut project. Thank you for tuning into the second installment of our three-part Cricut tutorial series. In this video, we covered interacting with the Cricut machines themselves in combination with Design Space in order to complete our first project. In the next video, we will be covering all things heat transfer. Have a nice day!